It's Wednesday, May 16th. There are just 538 days left until the 2008 presidential election.
It's noon in New York and 9 a.m. on the West Coast.
I'm Will.
I'm Chris.
And this is Political Lunch. Welcome back to Political Lunch. In just a second, we'll tell you everything you may have missed in last night's GOP debate. But first, I'll introduce my co-host. Chris Hauser is a film producer who has just made the leap back to the East Coast from California. Chris, welcome back, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Will. I never should have left.
Now, last night, the 10 GOP candidates squared off in their second debate of the season, but this time in the dirty South, and the gloves were off.
Well, Ronald Reagan had certainly left the building, and any ideas of a shining city on the hill were left behind in Simi Valley, California.
In the first debate at the Reagan Library, that Republican icon was mentioned nearly 20 times, but last night his name came up just 5 times, and it appeared the candidates had forgotten his message of a unified front for the GOP.
The candidates spent a lot of time going against each other, but not a lot of time going against the Democrats, except for this one noteworthy jab against former Senator John Edwards.
We've had a Congress that spent money like John Edwards at a beauty shop, and it's high time that we have a different kind of tax structure, and the fair tax would get us there.
Fox News was hosting the debate, and I, for one, will give the Foxies credit for stirring things up a bit. Now, it took the candidates some time to break out of their shells, and Chris Wallace was having none of it. After the first commercial break, he made it clear that he'd be playing Jerry Springer for the evening.
Gentlemen, you're being awfully polite to each other, if not to John Edwards, and so let's see if we can shake things up a little bit.
Former Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore was the first to take the bait, characterizing the top-tier candidates as soft on traditional conservative values.
Check out this clip.
We've got one candidate here on the stage who is in this campaign has said that he is against federal funding of abortions, but is in favor of federal financing of abortions. But then on the other hand, he said in the last debate he was against the Hyde Amendment. We have another candidate who says that he, in fact, is a tax cutter and would cut taxes and support these programs. But at the same time, in his own state, he was a dramatic tax increaser. We have another candidate who says that
Colorado Rep. Tom Tancredo, another second-tier candidate, was eager to jump on that bandwagon and offered this nifty jab at the frontrunners' history of changing their minds.
And I see so many conversions around this room tonight on a lot of things, and this is, I'm beginning to hint that, or I get the hint here, there's conversions happening on this issue also. Conversions on guns, conversions on abortion, conversions on immigration. You know, it's beginning to really sound like a Baptist tent revival meeting here, and I am glad to see conversions. I'm glad they happen, but I must tell you, I trust those conversions when they happen on the road to Damascus and not on the road to Des Moines.
So while the big three, Romney, Giuliani, and McCain all spent a lot of the first hour swatting second-tier flies, a big change came around the 60-minute mark when Libertarian representative from Texas, Ron Paul, tried to roll back the clock a few decades on American foreign policy. And he suggested that America's involvement in the Middle East may have provoked the 9/11 attacks.
Cue Rudy Giuliani.
That's really an extraordinary statement. It's an extraordinary statement of someone who lived through the attack of September 11, that we invited the attack because we were attacking Iraq. I don't think I've ever heard that before, and I've heard some pretty absurd explanations for September 11.
Now, regardless who you're with on that one, it was a very genuine moment, and for the first time since the John Edwards crack earlier in the evening, Rudy Giuliani succeeded in getting the audience to, well, he pretty much worked him into a fervor of applause on his response.
Now, after that point, the top-tier candidates had more or less sent the long shots home from school early. Then the top tier, they turned their attention to one another. Mitt Romney strikes first, accusing Senator McCain of sleeping with the enemy in his work on campaign finance reform and immigration policy.
And my fear is that McCain-Kennedy would do to immigration what McCain-Feingold has done to campaign finance and money in politics, and that's bad.
But McCain responds with a capable counterattack on Romney's Achilles heel. His perceived track record of changing his position or flip-flopping on a lot of key social issues.
Well, I've taken and kept a consistent position on campaign finance reform? Is there anyone who believes there's not enough money washing around money in politics, which has corrupted our own party? I have kept a consistent position on right to life, and I haven't changed my position even on even-numbered years or have changed because of the different offices that I may be running for.
Now, last night there was less time devoted to these social hot-button issues than in the previous debate on MSNBC. That's almost surprising considering that Fox was hosting this one. But the questions that were asked on topics such as abortion were particularly hard-hitting. Take, for example, this question to Senator Sam Brownback.
Since you've opposed abortion in every instance except to save the life of the mother, how you would explain to a rape victim who does not believe that life begins at conception why her trauma should be compounded by carrying the child to term?
It'd be a very difficult situation, and it is a very difficult situation, but the basic question remains, is the child in the womb a person? Is it a viable life? And if it is a person, it's entitled to respect.
And then this one to Governor Mitt Romney.
You once were pro-choice because a relative died after she underwent an illegal abortion. Tell me what you would say to someone else who lost a wife or a daughter to an illegal abortion if you named the Supreme Court justice who tipped the balance and overturned Roe versus Wade.
Well, obviously a terrible circumstance. As you described something of that nature, it just makes you sick. And I can't imagine my heart not being rent by virtue of having a circumstance like that presented to me. I can tell you that I've looked at this long and hard. I've always been personally pro-life. I've taught that to others. It's been part of my faith. The question for me was, what should government do in this kind of setting?
On the subject of abortion, Rudy Giuliani has taken a lot of heat for his pro-choice stance. But last night he was given an opportunity to give a little bit more nuance to his position, and he responded with this.
There are things that you can oppose, things you can be against, and then you can come to the conclusion in the kind of democracy we have, the kind of society that we have, and the kind of society we have where we want to keep government out of people's personal lives, that you can respect other people's view on this. And I think everyone on this stage, including most Democrats, could probably very, very usefully spend a lot of time figuring out how we can reduce abortion. It's going to take a while for the courts to figure out what to do about this. And while we're looking at that, we should do what I did in New York, which is to try and reduce abortions as much as you can, try to increase adoptions.
Now we get to the much-anticipated finale when all this talk of conservative cojones gets put to the test with a hypothetical question. It had to do with terrorist attacks in the U.S., and we've captured the suspects. And these candidates, if president, would they endorse torture? I don't think they actually said the word torture at any point, but
no.
How far would they go to get information that might prevent future attacks?
Right. On this very difficult issue, obviously, it was quite a loaded question, and predictably, John McCain came out with his very hardline stance against torture or any derivation thereof, such as enhanced interrogation techniques, I believe they're calling it. Which,
that phrase came up quite a bit last night.
It could be different. We don't quite know, and it seems like some of the candidates are a little confused on the distinction as well. But Mitt Romney isn't, and he basically, along with most of the other candidates, endorsed the use of any method possible in the given scenario, and pretty much embraced the notion of roughing up the bad guys at Guantanamo.
Some people have said we ought to close Guantanamo. My view is we ought to double Guantanamo. We ought to make sure that the terrorists, and there's no question, but that in a setting like that, where you have the ticking bomb, that the President of the United States, not the CIA interrogator, the President of the United States has to make the call, and enhanced interrogation techniques have to be used. Not torture, but enhanced interrogation techniques, yes.
So let's talk recap. In the first debate, it was an exercise in sort of Reagan-esque sermonizing. We got a dose of reality with last night's performance. A lot of ground was covered, but it's worth noting that the environment and global warming were only mentioned once, and healthcare was not mentioned at all. But when it comes down to it, Chris, give me a breakdown. Who came out on top, who was at the bottom of the heap, and who needs to be thrown under the bus?
Okay, well, there's a pretty wide spectrum here. Now, just as in the first debate, Mitt Romney is just an incredible speaker. He comes across as completely prepared. We were talking about this earlier.
Sure.
Compared to some of the, let's say, second or even third-tier candidates, it's just the stark contrast is just amazing. So Mitt Romney, I think, was undoubtedly the winner of the first debate. I think it could be argued he was the winner of the second one, too.
Sure.
But given Rudy Giuliani's awkward performance in the first debate, and that he's such a, well, I suppose he's a front-runner in many circles for the presidency.
He had a lot to prove last
Right,
night.
and he did a great job. I mean, he came across as utterly composed. His extemporaneous response to Representative Paul was excellent.
Sure.
So it was a great performance by Giuliani. I mean, let's just be completely honest here. 10 candidates is a lot to handle, and it's very difficult to hold a substantive debate with that many people on stage.
Sure. So we'll see if the GOP elders decide to trim some fat before we all get back together in New Hampshire in early June. Now, those two debates are June 3rd and June 5th, both the GOP and Democratic debates, just 2 nights apart. Now, Political Lunch, Rob and I will be there.
Excellent.
So if you're planning to be in town or if you're attending the debates, make sure to check politicallunch.com or myspace.com/politicallunch to find out the details. We'll be throwing a party, and we hope to see you there. Chris, thanks so much for joining us today. Come back anytime. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on Friday.
Okay, well, we can see how we did.
Whew, very good. Very good.